Hello, it's Rafael Gutierrez, the author of Serious and the Rarest Things and Off the Rails, as well as Breaking Points. And today I'm going to take a little side from what I have been doing and talk about injuries and training. The reason is I was looking online and someone had posted a picture saying, the great thing about martial arts is by 40 you end up with knee braces. Now, I will say I'm 44 right now. I'm actually about 40, almost 45 now. And I don't have knee braces. I don't have problems with my knees. I don't have problems. The only problem I have is I do have a high arch. I do have problems with my Achilles tendon sometimes, but that's things that I actually have nothing to do with martial arts. It has to do with my pretty much a defect in my anatomy. The truth is, all poor training, regardless of what you do, will lead to damage and will lead to things like knee braces, fractures, sprains, strains, and things that will pretty much become worse over time. Proper training, we actually start finding that it limits injuries. Now, I actually tell my classes just so they can see how things progress. For most of human history, life expectancy has been about 35 years. Today, in the U.S., life expectancy is around 78, 79, depending on which numbers you use. So we're talking about the average lifespan has more than doubled. And, actually most of it since in the last, 100 years in the U.S., there's actually always, it's gotten better and better throughout the years. We've had more and more, we've had an increase in longevity. Now, the other thing we find is this: as exercise science becomes more and more sophisticated, as they end up finding more and more, pretty much more and more structural, better ways to do things, we actually see the career span of athletes increasing. For instance, if you actually look at some of the old things in baseball, you'll find that pitchers, their career ended by the time they were 30 at times. So sometimes even younger. Now, a lot of pitchers are getting into their 40s and they're still able to throw, and sometimes some of these people at 40 are throwing faster than some of the younger kids. And what it has to do with is it has to do with understanding how training works and dealing with the training, not just the fixing stuff afterwards, but dealing with things before they become an issue. Strengthening certain things. If you go to a kinesiology or exercise science, you'll notice that these things are hardcore sciences that actually deal with anatomy, physiology, trying to make sure that you prevent injuries. And when you prevent injuries, you pretty much last longer. But it takes time to actually go and read all these different things. That's one thing that you'll see over and over again. As we have more information, we can prevent injuries. Sports, by the way, if you notice, have changed over time because we found out that certain things can cause long-term damage to athletes, so let's eliminate these things so we don't have that. If you watch the old boxing, you'll notice that as long as someone's knee was off the canvas, you can go ahead and hit them. And you could hit people behind the back of the head. Now we have actually rules in place which prevent people from getting killed in the ring as often. Every so often it does happen, but I won't get into that. Accidents happen. If you think about it, in every sport you can't have injuries just because of freak accidents. So, like I said, there's a lot of different things that can actually can happen. One is by understanding basic body dynamics, understanding how the alignment goes, you can end up preventing most of the injuries that people have had for a long time. Now, let's talk about some of the injuries that people have which are preventable. These are muscle sprains and actually pulling muscles, sprained ankles, shoulder injuries, knee injuries, shin splints, tendonitis, wrist sprains and dislocations. All of these are things that can actually be prevented. And if we prevent it, we end up having pretty much a longer career, a longer path in martial arts. We don't have to stop because our knee hurts. Now, how do we prevent most of these? It's actually, some of it is pretty easy. One of the things that most people talk about is having a 5 to 10 minute warm up and a 5 to 10 minute cool down. Now, these actually should be something that gets your heart beating a little bit, but it shouldn't be pushing hard, trying to get the person, breathing hard in the first 5 minutes. It should be a gradual thing. I have talked to people who say, well, they don't do warm-ups because in real life, you're not going to have time to warm up. The attack comes, you got to defend yourself. Well, that's true. But the other truth is, chances are we're never going to have to worry about the attack. So let's warm up and, we'll have less injuries and we'll be able to do our techniques a little better. The other thing is, a lot of times people talk about stretching. And some people, without knowing, will stretch without warming up. Big thing that people have come across exercise nutritional science is before you stretch, warm up. Do not stretch cold. Now, I will tell you that there is some argument whether stretching actually helps or it doesn't help, but a lot of people say if you're going to stretch, warm up and then stretch. So, just one other thing to actually think about. The other thing is ease up the intensity. Don't go full on. Actually build yourself up. So you actually start a little softer and you build up a little harder until you get to the higher levels of training that you want to get to. Now you can do this in an hour period. The other one that I have come across over and over again goes against what most people who don't know tell you. A lot of people tell you push yourself harder, no pain, no gain. Every exercise science article that you'll read out there, every medical article that you read on, tells you push yourself, but don't push yourself too hard. Actually, it's interesting if you actually read some of the old martial art books, some of the guys who actually used martial arts for life and death told you never train to a point where you can't move the next day. Reason is, if you think about it, if you're going to need it, it's not going to happen when you don't think you're going to need it. It's not going to happen when you think it's going to happen. It's going to happen when you don't realize that you're going to need it right at that moment. So don't push yourself so hard that you do damage to yourself, that you feel pain. And it actually leads to another important thing, and that is listen to your body. Pain is your body's way of telling you that you're stressing it for in a certain reason. Now, there's actually certain things that are interesting. There's a lot of different tissues. And some tissues, such as cartilage, if you're having pain on them, you're causing damage to them, and cartilage does not grow back normal. If you are damaging cartilage, you're actually damaging the cartilage will not grow back, and you will have a long-term injury because of it. The brain is another thing. I saw a video of someone who was trying to learn to take hits in the head and had someone punch him. Well, that's only a quick way to get yourself head injuries and potentially even increase your risk of Parkinson's. Remember, your body's made to be a certain way. Muscles and bones are a little different. If you stress but not break them, you can actually end up building them a little stronger. Bones, if you actually go to the things on bone, it talks about you can get stress fractures, muscles, you can get muscle fatigue that causes damage, but if you can stress these to be a little stronger. Now, the other important thing that actually people forget is understanding their body. Remember, this actually goes with the pain. Understand your body. Know that you may have some trouble spots from previous activities that you've done. For instance, let's say at one point you injured your knees. Well, there's certain things you're going to want to do to avoid pressure on your knees. Now, some people say, well, no, it's done this way in martial arts. And I will tell you, it's most of the time that's, in many cases, not necessarily proper. When you're dealing with knees, when you're dealing with hips, feet, if you have an injury, you have to modify yourself to that injury. If not, you're just going to cause more damage to your body, and then you will need knee braces if you didn't already. So know your limitations and work around it. Don't try to force your body to fit into something that it doesn't. Another big thing that is important is nutrition. A lot of people don't understand nutrition. For instance, I actually tell people, if you really want to be healthy, usually you want to try to find out what your ideal amount of calories are, and use the 60% of your caloric intake from carbohydrates, about 20% from fat, and 20% from protein. That's usually what most people recommend. They've actually found it's a lot of extreme athletes who are high competitors, the level of carbohydrate percentage goes up, not down. That's actually one of the problems a lot of people make. But before you do this, remember, go and see a dietitian if you're actually interested in doing this, to see what would be ideal for you. Make sure your caloric intake is what you require. Recovery is another important thing to prevent injury. Uh, One of the big things that a lot of people do is they don't rest. I know that there's a lot of people who want to get the black belt, for instance, as fast as possible. So they go to every class doing as much as they can. Then they get injured and they can't continue. So that's one of the big things that's important is make sure your body gets enough rest. Make sure you have enough sleep. Make sure you have enough time to heal when you're injured. Make sure you don't tear things which could have healed and been better off. Now, what do you do if you do get injured? Biggest thing to do when you get injured is do not train on anything that's injured. For instance, you hurt your foot. The ideal thing is don't train on the foot because a lot of times you'll actually modify the way you stand when you're injured to avoid the painful reaction, which means you're not lining up proper the way your body normally should be lining up. You actually start using things in a different angle, and that can end up causing more damage, not just to the area that's injured, but other areas. A lot of times, if you actually look at some of the problems that happens to professional athletes and dancers, especially when they push themselves, they end up getting more injury, not just the area that's already injured, but in other areas as well. Now, if you do get injured, you do have to take care of it. And big thing is make sure you go to a medical professional to see what you need to do. Now, until you can get to a medical professional, a lot of times people tell you that if you're injured, you should take the care of yourself by using the acronym RICE, which is rest the area, ice the area, compress the area, and elevate it. So, for instance, let's say I hurt my elbow. I'd want to rest it, bring it up a little higher, compress it, and ice it. So I wouldn't want to stay here. Maybe probably bring it up a little so it actually gets a little bit better healing. Legs the same way. You're injured your ankle. Wrap it up, put it on, elevate it, ice it, compress it, and rest it. The brace acronym. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember that it's a lot of times people will tell you to do things and they don't understand what they're actually looking at. So it's your responsibility if you want to progress in martial arts to actually study your anatomy, study body mechanics, and look into what is available for you as a student of martial arts. Community colleges are a great place to go because, well, classes tend to be cheaper than in most places. Sometimes there are seminars. I've done a couple on pretty much lining up the body, but there's many ways you can actually find this out. I do videos which you can actually take them and eventually go on and teach yourself what you need to improve your martial arts. I hope you enjoyed this. Have a nice day, and if you want to help support the channel, please go on Amazon, buy one of my 3 books, and well, I'll appreciate it. Thank you, and have a nice day.